Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Our Thread, the podcast, bringing our content to you. Tonight, we're super excited to get into episode 3, Gladiator versus Oldboy. Wow, folks. What we have here is two completely different tales of revenge that are epic in all proportions. But before we get into this literal battle breakdown, I'd like to give a special shout out to tonight's sponsor, House Party, the free application available on Android and iPhone. House Party is a face-to-face social network where you can connect with the people you care about most. And folks, the people I care about most are right here with me on Our Thread. And believe me, folks, when we're not here on Our Thread, we're on House Party together. This is the app that got me through quarantine, and I'm not lying to you, folks. But without further ado, let's get into this bracket battle. But not before we hit you upside the head with that fire intro music I know y'all love so much, produced by Our Thread member, Beware.
Good morning!
Morning!
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Well, it's very, homey.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here.
I hope you realize how you hurt my feelings.
I'm afraid to just shoot our mouth. Next place.
Just take it easy, man.
I'm perfectly confident.
Yeah, waving the fucking gun around?
Comrade, you are.
Look, I made a mistake, all right? It didn't make any difference anyway.
Hey, I'm letting it go. But don't say it doesn't matter. Every line matters.
Get off my back!
Don't fuck with my plan!
And like that, he's gone.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Our Thread podcast, bringing our content to you, featuring all it is.
It's official, old buddy. Who has been.
Beware.
From then on, he was known as Benny the Jet Rodriguez.
The Doc.
You're the doc, Doc.
The Cat.
If you already know the answers to your questions, then why ask? Pig fuck!
And myself, Savage.
I'm 6'5", 220, and there's two of them.
It's time. Revenge is mine. Let's go, folks. Gladiator versus Oldboy. But let me ask y'all, how are my yuggos feeling out there? How did homework go this week?
We did it. Lots of homework, but we did it. Lots of watching movies. It's probably about 5 hours of watching movies, but we did it.
I'm proud of you guys.
I'd say the pressure was on. Some last minute homework for myself.
Okay. Doc, what about you, Doc?
I don't know, man. I'm just feeling vengeful after this week of homework.
Beware, what do you got to say?
I just finished watching Oldboy 20 minutes ago. I feel like I got an ice pick stabbed in my ear.
Oh. Folks, it doesn't matter when you turn in your homework. If you get your homework in time, that's fine. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, I have a special guest with us on Our Thread. And this isn't a new member to Our Thread, because this man's been with us since the beginning. This is Body. And I want to bring out Body to talk about Gladiator. You know why, folks? Because Gladiator is one of Body's all-time favorite movies. So we're going to go to him for a little bit of a sloppy synopsis, if you will. And Body, why don't you just tell us what the movie Gladiator means to you? Body, welcome to Our Thread.
Means everything to me. I wake up in the morning, I make my son watch Gladiator before we do anything. Greatest movies of all time.
But one of the movies I know that is your favorite of all time is a movie we've already had on a bracket. What movie do you think that is, Body? What's another one of your favorite all-time movies?
Braveheart.
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 We're going to go with Whiplash, Body. Whiplash, we had a battle breakdown. And I know that's one of your favorites, too. When's the last time you saw Gladiator, Body?
Probably about 2 months ago, month and a half ago.
Now,
pretty fresh.
Disappoint. Obviously, I watched bits and pieces along the way.
Sure.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it quite a bit.
Hey, Body, about how many times a year do you watch The Gladiator?
At least 6 to 10 times a year. At least. I'll scroll through like Sling, and if Gladiator's on there, nothing else matters. So
that's like
just
all
to get
day.
30 minutes of Gladiator, call it good.
I'll tell you what, I just watched Gladiator recently, and I've seen it many times. We're looking at probably 3, 4, 5 times. But what I just watched before our episode to get myself pumped up was Gladiator in 10 minutes. Only the best scenes, and with epic music behind it. I couldn't believe it. I was just right back there. It is a heavy movie, and it is one of the greats, like all 64 movies we have on this bracket, the greatest. But we're trying to figure out what is the greatest. And I don't know. I think we already heard from Bod that Gladiator is his favorite movie. So, Body, if you had to guess, this being still only the first round of our bracket battles, you think Gladiator is going to make it all the way to the Final Four?
Gladiator make it to, what do you have? So, yeah, probably at least in the top 10. So, is it the, like, Elite 8?
Yeah,
I make it there.
Appreciate that. I can't say whether I disagree or agree not, because there's just so many great ones on the list. I know all of our thread members have studied it and seen it. You know what we're going to do, though? I want to just get everybody's thoughts on what they felt after they watched Gladiator, and then we'll get into talking about Oldboy too. But since we have our special guest Body with us, let's talk about Gladiator real quick. You know what? I'm going to pass it to Savage.
Yeah, Gladiator I had only seen once before I watched it this week. So the first time I saw it was in the theater. So that came out in 2003. That was just, the year after I graduated from high school. So it was a long time ago. And I'd forgotten how emotional specifically the ending of the movie is. I thought I wasn't, I guess, ready for that. I thought it was a pretty cool way that they tie everything together, as far as some of the flashbacks you're seeing where he's walking through the where Maximus is walking through the field and brushing up against the wheat with his hands, and all the flashbacks dealing with his wife and his son. I'd forgotten about that aspect of the movie and how poignant it was to have the deaths of his closest kin. That was kind of a hard part about that movie.
Yeah, man. I kind of just echo what Will was saying. I probably hadn't seen this, and it's probably been a good 10 years. I think probably the last time I saw it was in the Lion's Den at Body's place, watching it staying up late night one night, putting it on, and reliving the glory.
One night.
This movie hit different for me in so many ways, man. Will mentioned the emotional aspect of it, and I think, like any good movie does, you feel emotional on certain scenes and stuff, but this one just hit me differently with, for one, last time I saw it, I wasn't married, didn't have a son, and that scene just hit me really hard this time around. And also the whole, slave and dealing with an emperor and kind of the politics of the time of that movie really resonated kind of similarly with what I feel like what's going on right now is really hitting home with that. And I know Beware had some comments about that earlier today. I saw on Twitter, so I kind of know he's on the same. And I want to see if he, has anything to say with respect to that.
Beware. Why don't you tell him what you have to say?
Yeah. I think like the fellas had said, I hadn't seen Gladiator in a long time, probably over a decade. I know it stands the test. I know it's one of those that I had in my DVD rack forever. Then they all got stolen. That's another story. But it's just as potent as it used to be. The point that the doc made about it being timely, yes, indeed, it does feel like it's topical that you've got Caesar running his empire, kind of putting this charade on for the people and giving them these things to kind of dangling them over their head daily with these fights, while in the back end he's selling all their wheat and their crops, and they're going to be hungry and starving in 2 years. It's reminiscent to what's going on with the current system, obviously, where he gives people tax breaks, with the president gives people tax breaks, humors them, gets them to vote, and then in the back end, he's just defunding everything that's going to make a difference down the line, just so he ultimately gets the biggest bang. And it's just, he's power hungry. And I said on Twitter, I said, America needs a Maximus, and I don't know, maybe collectively we're becoming Maximus. But
wow, I like that a lot.
But
real quick, Beware. I thought the same exact thing when you said that. I was trying to think like who one person would be Maximus, and I think I circled back around to we all are. I think we all are rising up to kind of fight that power.
Yeah.
And real quick, kind of also go off of what you're saying, I had a note of like, there's a scene where they're throwing out bread, to people in the audience, and then obviously doing this, giving the fights, each day, just to kind of keep them humored. And I kind of wrote a note of like stimulus checks and Blue Angels is basically the equivalent of, bread and fights,
Real.
Hey, Cap, what do you got to say about it? The artist Cap is in.
Yeah, I guess I would like to talk about Commodus a little bit too. You see that he has this really interesting, obviously, relationship with his father, and then he's not a very capable leader, and he overcompensates. He's not a tough guy. He's not a warrior, and he overcompensates by using his power in a very negligent and unethical way. And I think if we're going to talk about Sign of the Times, I think that rings pretty true. Another thing I'd like that stands out to me is the very beginning of Gladiator, the battle where they're sort of taking over. It's like one of their final battles where they're taking over Germania. Yeah, and it's more about him and his soldiers. They're establishing the respect that they have for Maximus as a leader, and they're establishing that he is the most crucial warrior and leader that Rome has, and everybody knows that he's really the true leader. And it takes Commodus to kill his own father in order to enter as the leader of Rome through the back door. And it just makes for a really, really interesting movie. Not only about revenge, but just about pure will.
Absolutely.
To fight your way into justice.
All he wanted to be was a farmer. Maximus the farmer. Savage, why don't you talk about it for a second?
Yeah, so Commodus really, for whatever reason, for me, kind of reminded me, I guess it's pretty obvious too, but kind of reminded me of Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones, with the way that he not only looks, but the way that he kind of acts. I know that not everyone is a Game of Thrones fan in this thread, but I thought that there's a lot of similarities between how he composes himself, how he treats people. Not quite as evil as Ramsay Bolton. I would think, within some of the interesting familial relationships that he has, specifically with his father, and some of the outcomes that happen there. I thought it was pretty kind of cool to see that kind of comparison, because any sort of medieval movie, you're gonna compare it to Game of Thrones or something along those lines. So I felt like, for me, that was kind of one of those kind of standouts.
And I'm sure that was inspiration for Game of Thrones too, Gladiator. Just that the battle is filmed so well. It really is. It ages so well too. We can talk about that too. But what I really want to do is, as Beware said before, the other side of the coin. Oldboy, and let's be straight here, folks. Oldboy, if the last film you saw that was Oldboy was of an American film, you saw the wrong one, folks. We want to go with the original Korean subtitle film, Oldboy. This is the truly true masterpiece of a film. And I'll just start it off. This used to be one of my Gladiators, a movie that pumped me up like body. I used to watch scenes in this and just get hyped up, filled with testosterone, and in college, and just ready to rage. And I really got amped up off this. That being said, Gladiator does the same thing too. And Oldboy is kind of sprinkled in with these real big fight scenes and stuff like that. And I'll just say it like this. If Gladiator, there's a lot of dynamics to it. Obviously, the battles are some of the most biggest things about it. But for Oldboy, it's hands down, it is the fight scenes and the battling, the punching. That's it for me. That really is still what takes me. That's what I'm waiting for in anticipation. A great story, and we're going to talk a lot more about that, folks. But I really like the action scene. Who else wants to talk about Oldboy and kind of give their first impressions of that? Do we have any first-time Oldboy viewers here? If you could just raise your hand so I can pass it to somebody. No, everybody's seen it. Well, that's great. Beware.
I'd like to weigh in on Oldboy, maybe in a little bit of a comparison. First of all, I think both of these movies are about warriors. The difference between Oldboy and Gladiator is you come into the movie, Maximus is a general. He's already a trained fighter. What I thought was interesting about Oldboy is that, this is a movie about somebody who is captured and kept in a room for 15 years, and he does not know why. We see...
The viewer doesn't know why either.
Yeah, the viewer doesn't know why. It's a big deal. We see that he's a drunk at the beginning of the movie, and that's how we know about Dasu.
Probably had it coming to him. Yeah.
Yes. So what I want to point out is that what I just think is the coolest part of the movie is that he's in there for so long that he marks off the size of, the outline of a man in his captive apartment, and he starts hitting the wall. And that is awesome to me. So, but what he's doing is he's breaking down his knuckles to make, and you see on his fists after a while that he's got these pads on his knuckles that are almost like he's wearing calluses. Sure, yeah. He's wearing gloves on his hands. So the first time that you see Dasu fight after he is released suspiciously, after 15 years, he kind of takes a cigarette out of these group of guys are standing together. He takes a cigarette out of one of these young guys' mouths, and they decide they're going to fight. And you can hear his inner monologue, and he's like, is all this self-taught training gonna
be put to use? Yeah,
is it gonna work? And he just he's quick, and he's agile, and it seems like you can see that he's self-taught as a fighter, because it's not it doesn't look like any specific style to me. Not that I'm an expert, but
Beware, what do you got to say about Oldboy? I know we watched this together many times, or in increments together a lot of times. What do you got to say?
It's a sick and twisted movie, honestly. That was my I'm not even just trying to say that for laughs and shock. It really is. And I just finished it not too long ago, and it's disturbing, and it's heavy in lots of different ways, and that the storyline is complex, and that the weight of the complex storyline is also heavy, that it's topical and gross. And I think compared to Gladiator, it's not as rewarding at the end.
The incest is much worse.
The incest is much worse. There's definitely a double dip of incest in these movies. And it's a tough watch. It's a tough watch, and it is great, and there are awesome fight scenes, but at the end of the movie, you're just like, oh. And I mean,
can I ask you something, Beware, though?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is it the ending of the movie that kind of makes you feel like, oh, that was a tough watch, though, when really in the beginning, when we're kind of blinded to the fact of what really truly is the plot, I feel like it kind of is very intense, and you're anticipating stuff. So I feel you, though, because when you get to the end, you're hit with the fucking soup punch.
The end is bad, but it's not just the end. I mean, I'm kind of claustrophobic, I suppose, and watching a movie for the first half of it or whatever, where you're stuck in this box and it's just he's sticking his head out this little hole in the wall. That makes me uncomfortable. That's definitely not an energy boost by any means.
Fair point.
they're the halfway through the middle scene, the teeth pulling scene. Like that's hand over the screen, so I didn't have to watch that because it was fucking disturbing.
I hear you, Doc. What do you got to say?
Yeah, thanks for tossing it to me. As we're kind of doing this sloppy synopsis, which I don't think is that sloppy actually. Everybody's making some really good points. But I feel like it's kind of been said, so I want to pull it all together. But like some of these other movies that we get paired up like are just almost like opposite ends of the spectrum type movies, or it's like sometimes hard to compare one to the other. This one maybe fits in that, but interestingly, it has a lot in common, and you guys have already touched on it, so I'm pulling it all together. So all it is kind of started out by saying these are kind of revenge films, and both of them like definitely are revenge films. And then Kat, mentioned, there's incest involved, and I think Savage brought that up earlier too. And so they both have, some revenge aspect to it, a little subtle incest to it, which I think is interesting. And I think that's probably, the some of the stuff that Beware might be nodding to, and kind of hard to watch and things like that. And even my wife, because my wife is a trooper, she watches these movies with me. She had never seen Oldboy before.
Shout out to Amy.
I knew I threw this on the text, on the thread, but Amy immediately after we finished watching Oldboy goes, I just don't know if I'm into that kind of revenge movie. She goes, I don't know if I'm gonna, and even so, even earlier on, and we'll get to this scene. Well, I'll save it for that. But there's just, I think I get that, Beware. I think everybody kind of reacts differently, and I too. And I think that was definitely purposeful, but there was definitely some scenes and a vibe of this one that was different enough and squirmy enough compared to others that kind of left you feeling a certain way.
Hey Doc, while we're on these scenes, why don't we just talk about it? Why don't we go from our sloppy synopsis into our greatest scenes? And I actually want to pass it down to Savage and see what Savage got to say about a scene. I don't know, maybe a Savage.
Sure, we're talking about possibly a Savage scene, and I know both of these movies definitely would have that kind of scene with it. One of these movies though has, I think, a more Savage scene. And I'm gonna go with the hallway scene from Oldboy.
Yes.
I haven't seen anyone that effective with the hammer since Tim Taylor and Al Borland did it back in the mid '90s on Tool Time. And I think that kind of a scene like that where it's a single cut, between, I think it was just under 4 minutes long, of a single cut kind of panning, the camera on the dolly going across, and then showing all of these amazing, fighting choreographies with Dae-Soo. Most of it, he's having a knife sticking out of his back, and he's also has a claw hammer throughout, and it's pretty it's a pretty intense scene, and it's one of those like single cut scenes. It probably took a month to really, or a month or two to kind of get the choreography down and some of the camera work down. So I would definitely say, for me, one of my favorite scenes, which also happens to be a Savage scene, would be the Oldboy hammer scene.
Wow, folks! Hey, Savage, yeah. I love when somebody just does it for me, and you just did it, because all I can say is that is my favorite scene too of both movies, guys. This is why I used to rewatch this movie, because it used to get me so pumped up. And little fun fact for you, fact from Pat from his all it is here is that Beware and I have sampled both of these movies and put it into our music, but actually Oldboy was sampled, that song that runs out throughout the movie. So good. One of my favorite, I wouldn't say scores, but it just coincides and so it molds with the movie so well that I love it. It really gives me goosebumps and chilly willies and the R.L. Steins, if you will. And I love that scene. Everything Savage said, I'm going to just take it and say he said it. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it to Cap, because I'm pretty sure Cap has some specifics to say about something too. Go ahead, Cap.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out some of the things that I also like about that scene. The fact that, you see a lot of movies, the hero or the guy that you're rooting for in a situation like that beat everybody up, not really get hit, and just send all the bad guys to the ground, knocked out. But he gets hit, he gets beat up, he gets taken to the ground, and it's believable. He's fighting these guys that don't really seem like they want to fight. They're not experienced fighters. Not that he's a super experienced fighter, but he's got a hammer. And when they get him and you think he's done, and they get him, like normally in a movie, or I'm sure in real life, when you've got 7 to 10 guys kicking you and stomping you and you're on the ground, you're done. But he's got a hammer, and what you see is him using the hammer to hit everybody's toes. And that's how he is able to regain momentum in the fight. And watching that and seeing how he gets out of breath, and he sort of catches his breath and gives one of the last two guys, the old 1-2, and knocks him out. Just being completely exhausted. I just think it was a very realistic looking fight scene. And I think that's pretty rare.
And it cuts, the elevator opens, blood trickles down his. Doc, what do you got to say?
I'm hyped again, just thinking about, you and Cap and Savage talking about that scene. That scene was actually, it took 3 days to shoot that scene. It was a one take, as Savage already talked about. As he mentioned, though, it took a lot longer to kind of plan and choreograph all that. But they dedicated several days to just shooting that scene to get it right. But what I loved, and Kat touched on this real quick, but the pacing and the timing and the choreography is just on point. And then to speak to what Cap was saying about how it's realistic too, is I love, along with the beats of the fight, they all pause to take a break, because they're exhausted. And I love that, just right kind of,
they were
it's not necessarily in the middle, it's towards the end a little bit, but they all kind of collectively agree, let's pause, take a deep breath, and then get back into it. I just love that aspect.
The tough guy, the bigger guy, doesn't want no smoke at the end, but he has to go for it, and then he just gets the left, right, 1-2, and it's great.
I love it when they're slowing down towards the very end of that scene too, and they're they're just casually just chucking their weapons at him, but not trying to impale them.
Yeah,
they're just kind of lobbing all their shit at them, and it's pretty enjoyable. Those actors are probably just gassed.
And I'm sure we could all agree with this, but we have to say, I'm calling another Savage scene. Folks, we have a scene where people's teeth are being removed, and you pretty much see the whole thing. And I'll tell you what, have you ever watched a video and somebody scrapes their knee and you feel it? It's that natural reaction. I don't know. I've never had a teeth pulled like that, but I could feel it for a second. And maybe that's a little bit more what Beware is talking about. It forces you into feeling uncomfortable throughout. Maybe I wanted that more in my youth. Beware, what do you got to say?
So yes, that scene is definitely disturbing. One other scene that I'm glad that I noted, because it was so weird. And obviously it's way more weird. It's weird along the movie, as you don't understand, for the first time viewer, as you don't understand what's happening. But when he has sex with
sloppy, me too.
Yes, when they have sex,
we're here for it though. Yikes.
And then he is in there with the gas mask, and he gasks him, and he's just in there petting her body. And the guy is just standing there. Also, his assistant is also standing with the gas mask and is weirded out to the point where he slightly looks away. That scene is so freaking weird, man. And just that scene is just another one of those. I don't know if it's Savage scene, best scene, whatever, but that scene, the tooth pulling scene, the scene also at the very end where he says, "From this moment on, I am Wu Jin's dog." And he proceeds to just go in.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, the ending.
I got, speaking of scenes, we're going to have Daesu meeting Midu for the first time in the restaurant. And you find him ordering something that is alive. And she brings him a live octopus. And he eats it. He eats it alive. I'd like to point out that talk about method acting. Dae-Soo's character had to actually eat 3 live octopus to complete that scene.
Cap. 4. The doc's in, folks. He's fact checking right now. The doc is in, folks. He said 4. That's official. The cap. It's all right. Hey, real quick,
well,
guys.
that was a crying wolf situation. But,
the cap cries wolf, folks. Yikes! Hey,
real quick.
Go ahead,
just
Doc.
rolling off of that. When the director Chan-wook Park, when he won an award for this movie for Oldboy, he actually thanked the actors, the writers and stuff, and he also thanked the octopods whose lives were given, because it took those 4 octopods to film that
that's
scene.
why we have the doc, guys.
Oh wow!
I needed that. Wow. That is great.
I'm sure at the end of that movie, like there's not, like a movie's made in America where they have no animals were harmed during the filming of this movie. I'm sure they couldn't actually accurately claim that at the end of that movie. That's probably for sure.
Beware. What do you got to say?
No, I just wanted to point out one more scene from Oldboy before we moved on. I just really like the scene too, where the I was mentioning a bunch of scenes that are like, kind of gross and disturbing. But the one scene that I really like that's not the obvious fight scene that's dope is the one where he is getting like prepped, and it starts to show the additional 8 years or whatever it is. And it shows like a split screen, and it's got the clock going on one side and with like the news, and it's showing Princess Diana dies, etc. And then it just keeps going through
9/11.
9/11, yeah.
And on the other side, he is doing his thing, just beefing up, getting in shape, it's cutting, massaging the hole in the wall, etc. I just really thought that was a dope scene, and it's sometimes those kind of montages are cheap, but that one isn't cheap, and it does a good job of moving the story along while kind of showing how disheveled he gets mentally and physically.
Man, you're absolutely right. That is a great part of the film that really brings you into how much time he's had to deal with. But we've talked about some great, savage, wonderful scenes from one movie, Oldboy, and we have another epic movie, and we also have our special guest with us, Body.
Yeah.
Body, can you talk about an epic scene in Gladiator? And I'm really hoping you talk about something that is just one of the things that not many movies have done, and if they've done it, they probably copied off this movie. Body, what do you got to say?
Oh man, copying off movies. I don't know if you can talk about that with Gladiator. Well, Mike talked about it earlier. The first part is basically just sets you into like, I'm more about like the history of it as well with Gladiator, and just that alone just got me so pumped up how it was done. Realistic looked, and just overall that first part really sets you up for how well done the movie was.
Body, what about one of the most quotable lines from Gladiator? I think that's attached to one of the best scenes ever. Can we talk about that, Body?
Which one are you talking about, man?
We put it in a Take Caution on this song. I think maybe Beware was the first person to cut it up and sample it and put it into a song clip before everybody started putting it into it. And folks, we've been doing that music thing for a long time, and that's probably a fact. I have to check with the doc. I'm not sure. Body, are you not entertained? Decent impression right there. Decent impression.
Sure.
What am I going to do, folks? What am I going to do? Take caution, folks. Take caution. All right, Body, I'm just going to feed off this because what we have in this movie is where he starts to realize that fighting for his freedom is in sight, and it's worth it. He's just not going to go out there. He has to fight.
And listen to me. Learn from me. I wasn't the best because I killed quickly. I was the best because the crowd loved me. Win the crowd, and you'll win your freedom.
I will win the crowd. I will give them something they've never seen before.
And now he's been told he has to be more than just a killer. He has to be an entertainer. And folks, what I'm talking about is a beheading, folks. We get a beheading in Gladiator, and then one of the biggest quotables ever. That scene is epic in all parts. Movies only wish they could have pulled that off. That was
not to mention he's double
scene.
fisted with the swords.
Yes.
During this beheading, it's an interesting way to cut off somebody's head.
The only way, really.
Like a scissors.
Third way.
It was a scissors chop across
scissor chop.
the side. Pretty,
good call.
Pretty bloody, pretty awesome to see.
Man, Doc.
So some kind of interesting. So when you're thinking about like best scenes and stuff, and I don't know if we want to throw it back to the most savage scene, but there's some really, really gruesome fight scenes, some ruthlessness with some of these battles. And then it seems, initially some of the fight scenes in the arena go from just straight up survival to, like you said, Pat, like he starts to get more kind of artistic with it, if you will, or more kind of entertainment and kind of setting things up. Starts more strategic and kind of battle, we're all work together. But yeah, some of those deaths in there, just, savage. I will say, bringing it back to savage, like, damn, if we're going to talk savages, we got to talk about, and I already kind of brought it up, but like the wife and the son and how they were, I think they said burnt alive, burnt and then put up, like, that's savage.
Squealed like a little girl. Your son squealed like a little girl.
Nice.
They tell me your son squealed like a girl when they nailed him to the cross. And
your wife moaned like a whore.
Like a whore. When they ravaged her.
They ravaged her.
Man.
Again.
Fuck.
Again.
Brutal.
And again.
Had is when Commodore sticks his tongue out. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. It's like, ooh, that's it.
Commodus.
Beware what you got to say. Oh, Commodus. Hey, folks, it's okay. We're going to call that an is perfection. No problem, folks. All good.
Borderline worst scene of both movies.
Which is what?
And this is rough.
Beware.
Is when Maximus's son says, "Papa," and he runs down the road because he thinks his dad is pulling up with the squad on the horses. Nope, that's not Maximus. That's the crew coming to burn everybody down, and they just run over Maximus's son as he's excited to see his dad with the horses, and they proceed to just go.
And you
hard.
see his wife's reaction to that too.
It's brutal.
I was just gonna say, I mean, that scene. There's a lot of messed up scenes in the movie, but I think a lot of them, they aren't made without the characters, right? So who's our top character?
Yeah, can we talk about something more uplifting?
Top characters that need to be discussed, and it's not a runaway. It's not a runaway by any means.
I'd like to weigh in, I guess.
Please do.
I'll vote for my most valuable character. I think the strongest performance is Commodus. We got Joaquin Phoenix in his probably
best.
I would say his breakout role. I'm not going to say he's the best supporting. I think he's the most important character of both movies. I understand that. I think it's the strongest acting, in my opinion. He's the reason why you have the movie. Russell Crowe, not that he's not great. I just feel like you have a reason. You have all the more reason to have revenge when you have an evildoer, and he is pretty evil, and he's pretty horrible in that he's a weak man, but he's not. He's dangerously smart, and that's my vote, and I'll pass it to Savage for the most valuable character.
You're on, Savage.
Yeah, so when you're saying like the breakout character, I do agree that Joaquin Phoenix had a fantastic appearance in this movie as Commodus. Well, if you're going to talk about breakout actors, I mean, it's gotta be Russell Crowe as Maximus, just because this was like his first like leading movie. I think the movie that he started making some ripples in Hollywood right before this was a couple years prior, in LA Confidential. And I think this is like the biggest movie. Definitely that summer, I remember seeing Gladiator that summer in 2000, and just how big of a movie this was, and how big of a character he was, and as an actor. So I for me, most valuable character has to be Maximus, played by Russell
Savage.
Crowe.
I feel like you just stuck a dagger right in my throat.
Too soon, folks. Hey, Doc, what do you got to say? Are these guys, break up this fight here, break up this tussle?
I respect and agree with what both Savage and Cap are saying. I think looking at Russell Crowe for one, we haven't gotten into these stats yet, but the Gladiator was nominated for 12 Academy Awards in the 2001 Oscars.
Facts with Doc.
Took home 5, including Best Actor Russell Crowe. And so I mean, like that kind of speaks for itself too. So we'll throw some stats at this argument here. That's not to say though, Joaquin Phoenix was actually nominated for Best Supporting Male Actor in the leading role, and he did not take that home. But here's our first trivia question: 2001, who took home Best Supporting Actor during that year?
Gosh, man, that's tricky. I'm gonna go with something by Leo. To be honest with you, I don't know why. Leo. I don't know what movie. I can't take it. Savage.
2001. So what else came out in 2000? I'm trying to remember.
Hey, how about this? I'll give you a hint. Movie was Traffic.
Benicio.
Benicio del Toro took home Best Supporting Actor over Joaquin Phoenix. Yep.
I was thinking Training Day.
That one didn't make the list, guys. Wow, but we do have the Mulligan rule. I don't know. Sometimes you get hit upside the head with a movie you used to think was really great.
Real quick, just kind of not off topic, but kind of like a little segue. Who do you think had the better career, Joaquin Phoenix or Russell Crowe?
Oh, I mean, I can answer that right away just because I think Joaquin Phoenix is showing us right now while he's continuing forward and has so much more great shit to offer. Joaquin, my vote, real quick. Pass it around. Beware.
Yeah, I'd have to say the same. Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I think what's been amazing.
Russell Crowe and A Beautiful Mind, man. Another break.
Ooh, Body. Our guest Body checks in with a real good one, man. And that one's not on our list, too.
So I will say, Russell Crowe, looking at his what he's done, Will already mentioned LA Confidential. Body just mentioned Beautiful Mind. I'm looking through the rest, and there's some okay movies throughout. Some decent roles throughout, but I'll admit,
he had some life problems too. He had a hard time adjusting, I think, to the whole thing. Joaquin did too, though.
Yeah.
Hey, wow.
So so I think that's a good point. All it is, but I'll bring it back to Savage's question, and then also bring it back to Cap. I want to support Cap's nomination in Joaquin Phoenix. But I think Joaquin is Russell Crowe's character. He kind of plays. I think his range is a little bit more limited. And I think that there's other actors that could kind of play. So, for example, who else was being considered for Russell Crowe's role in The Gladiator?
Mel Gibson.
Brad Pitt.
Yeah. Mel Gibson.
Turned it down. He felt he was too old.
Yeah, fair enough.
Jeez, good.
But I think there's Russell Crowe's another Mel Gibson, and I think there's another Mel Gibson and Russell Crowe, and if we think of it, shout it out. But I think there's these type of actors.
They're both from Australia.
There you go. Yeah.
Interesting. I did not know that.
So, but when I think of Joaquin Phoenix, man, I don't know, he's a unique actor. And somebody said it earlier, it took a little bit maybe for him to evolve into maybe who he is now, but he's always taken interesting roles. He's always kind of challenged himself to be unique, and his method of taking on that role and his method of playing that role is always so unique and genuine to me. And I think when it comes down to Russell Crowe versus Joaquin Phoenix in this movie, I mean, Russell Crowe is amazing, and I support he gets me pumped up, but Joaquin makes me feel fucking creepy.
Do you think that's true? I don't know. I think it is.
And his take on this character is perfect, and the perfect kind of counter to the Russell Crowe character. And I don't know if many other actors could have pulled that off. The other person that was auditioned for Commodus that is of note is Jude Law. I don't know if Jude Law could have played off.
I can see it.
He does have that. He plays a pompous very well, but like tough, maybe not so much. So I would still. I want Joaquin. I vote Joaquin for that. Just really quick to get in my most valuable character. I'm going to say Russell Crowe. I mean, I can't. I want to say. I want to bring out Oldboy because it really had an impact on me. Like I liked that movie more in my youth, like more than Gladiator for probably unfair reasons and just bias, and I just really enjoyed it. But Russell Crowe, I think, just really, it's like, why do I see Russell Crowe more? Why don't I? You know, and we've made this point. You know, I wish I seen him more. I really like him as an actor. Folks, we've talked about a lot of great things about two great movies. Quotables. Can we talk about quotables? I know we've mentioned a few, and I just laid it off with, "Are you not entertained?" Are you not entertained? Like, you can't really quotable Oldboy, but I will give you, folks, and help me out, Doc. Laugh alone, and the world laughs with you. Cry alone. Can we bring that up? I'm sorry. Let me.
Yeah, so I got it right. Yep, I did my research.
Thank you, Doc.
So,
you know,
it sounded like Tony was reading it.
But Doc, what do you got to say?
So it's laugh and the world laughs with you, weep and you weep alone. And this is actually the opening line of a poem entitled Solitude, written by Ella Wheeler Wilcox.
Facts with very appropriate. Solitude.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody else have any that I'm missing to add to the narrative? I know Gladiator's filled with a lot of great
I would say, yeah. Maybe Doc can help me out. But you know, we have sort of an unexpected, in my opinion, an unexpected twist in the movie where Commodus decides, I think I'll meet him, and he comes down, and he has to take, he makes Maximus take his mask off, and that's where you get the slow turnaround and this quote.
You will remove your helmet and tell me your name.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius, commander of the armies of the North, general of the Felix Legions, loyal servant to the true emperor, Marcus Aurelius, father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next.
That's definitely a powerful quote, and I think it sets the stage for the rest of the movie. And I don't know, what do you think, Beware? What's your favorite quote?
There's a lot of good quotes in Gladiator, obviously, but I really like the quote in Oldboy when he gets the first fight he's in, when he talked about when he grabs the cigarette and the guy calls him a dick shit, and he says, "Dick shit, a new word. Television doesn't teach you slang words.
Beware."
And I thought
that's pretty great.
Wow.
Cool. And then I also like, in reference to I meant to bring this up earlier, when Maximus says to Joaquin Phoenix, "The time for honoring yourself will soon be at an end." And then he bounces when they're at the center stage, which was actually also one of my favorite scenes. When when you get the reveal and he is in the middle, I want to meet him. After they have the craziest scene where they actually like team up and they beat and they win the battle royale, basically, where the chariots come
chained together.
And he steals the chariot, where he does what no other movie ever does, where he actually takes the other people's weapons and uses them against them. And then they win that. And then he comes down, Joaquin Phoenix comes down, and then the reveal there, he says,
"Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or the next."
And the time for honoring yourself will soon be at an end. That's hard.
I love all that, Beware. You know what else I love is that Beware, your mom was one of the she was big into film and big into classic film, but she also had her favorite films that she would have on all the time that we would come in, because Beware's house is where we hung out. She had Gladiator on all the time, and she really loved that movie, and I love that. Doc?
But taking it back to the scene, the reveal, as Beware brought up, what I love, this should have been brought up in the sloppy synopsis, but what I love about this whole dynamic between Commodus and Maximus is this power differential. And like when that reveal happens, Commodus wants to murder, wants him dead, wanted him dead, already put that order in, thought he was dead, sees him come to life as an actual threat in front of him right now, wants him dead, but the crowd will not stand it. So there's a politics game going on. And I love that there's this power differential of this is the emperor who can, at any, at a will, kill off anybody, make anything go his way. But because now this is public and that the crowd is supporting this gladiator, he has to kind of go along for the ride, and he has to play this smart because he could come across as looking as this barbarian who this ruthless leader, and he's trying to play his cards right. And so the power dynamic goes in the favor of the gladiator, Maximus. And I love this kind of back and forth and this strategic of how do I, that Joaquin Phoenix has to play his character. How do I play this? How do I get above him? How do I take him out?
How do I win over the crowd? Hey, it's my bread and water wasn't cutting it. In this life or the next, I'll get my revenge. But folks, it's time to get our own revenge, if you will, on one of these films. Of which one is the greater revenge tale? We're here to find out the greatest movie, but it just happened that these two really synced up very well, and we have a similar movie. But I'm going to call for the vote now, folks, and I'm going to pass it to Savage, who's going to lead us off with his vote. Savage, if you will.
These two movies were a lot more pleasurable to watch than last week's, where we did The Shining versus Deer Hunter. So these movies were movies I hadn't seen for a while, and it was really nice to see both of them. For Oldboy, I remember this movie being kind of like my first of not too many, but first of a few like introduction to like South Korea's ultra violent genre of movies. And it's definitely quite a way to tell a story. The teeth pulling, the swinging a hammer, the knife in the back, the solid single cut fight sequences. But I think as like a movie goes, I think Gladiator is just, it's one of those epic movies you put up against like something like Ben-Hur or some of those like big deal pre-Renaissance movies. And I really think that Gladiator as like a story, you can't really fuck with it too much. So I would say my vote would officially be for Gladiator over Oldboy.
Folks, we have a vote in, and it's Savage vote, and it's for Gladiator. And,
it is. What do you think?
I'm not going to get mad at you, and I never really would. We've had a few tussles, but nothing ever like that we could take to an arena. But what I'm going to say...
You forgot my name last week.
And I think that's because of how much I actually love you, and I'm just going to put it out there. Here on our thread. I'll see you on House Party later. Shout out to the sponsor tonight. What I do want to say is I had a movie I really loved at other time in my life when I was younger, when I was a young man, a teenager, before the brain was fully developed. And it was an introduction, what I thought Savage was going to say, but I know Savage is a film aficionado, and Doc, correct me if I'm wrong, but he knows his shit. And what I thought he was going to say was that was his introduction to foreign films, because I hadn't watched many foreign films that I have loved with subtitles. We have a couple on the list, City of God, and this one, Doc or Savage could tell you otherwise if there's another one. I don't think so. Inglourious
Parasite.
Oh, Parasite. Oh, no. Oh, I can't. And is that Korean too?
South Korea, yeah.
Wow, folks. So, I mean, that we have a great movie style making. As Savage said, it was more of a darker style, and I agree with that. But even though one of my favorite scenes in a movie, and it still pumped me up and gave me goosebumps, and I really got emotional when I watched it, nothing compared to me watching Gladiator. And all my Thread members explain that it really does hit hard for the time we're in now. I want a Maximus to save us. I keep on telling Beware we need superheroes to show up, but you know, we all got to be that superhero, and Gladiator is my energy I needed to move forward, and that's my vote tonight, folks. Gladiator is a great movie, and I think as Body, who signed off but was here with us tonight, our special guest, would probably, and I'm just going to say for sure, vote for Gladiator, is going to say that this could be one of the better movies and go all the way to the end. And I might say that too, folks. It was fantastic. It aged well. And now I want to pass it to the Cap.
Yeah, I think that I guess the more obvious choice would be Gladiator, for all the reasons you said. But watching both of these movies this week, I was really, really taken with Desu's character and everything that he had to go through, his solitude, you know, the fact that I guess what we really didn't touch on is the diabolical bad guy in this movie, Li Wu Jin, I believe his character's name is. He set him up to basically, he just destroyed his life. He just destroyed him. And it kind of, that goes along right. You're right there with him. You're figuring out what Desu's going through the entire movie. And watching that, I remember for the first time, it's kind of one of those reveals that blows your mind a little bit. You can't believe that this much effort was put into destroying another human being. And the difference, I guess, in this movie is that Desu's character gets hypnotized, and so it's sort of redeeming in a way that he wins his freedom of his mind back and gets to be in love, which is kind of twisted, but like, I'm a kind of twisted person. It was kind of twisted, satisfying to me to see that smile on his face at the end of the movie. He just feels happy, and he went through so much to get there. I'm gonna vote for, Oldboy.
Wow, folks! I'm super surprised by that. The Cap's vote is in, and it is for Oldboy, folks. Doc, what do you got to say about this?
Man, I'm vibing off of what Cap was saying, and I want to emphasize a couple things, and then also throw in some additional things as well. This Oldboy, although it is a revenge film, and it's cut from some similar cloths of other movies, it really was unlike any other movie I'd seen at the time. So that kind of blew my mind right off the bat. Very unique. Obviously we talked about the reveal at the end and the build up and the level of commitment to this guy's revenge on this character, Desu, and then his ultimate revenge against this character is unlike anything I'd ever seen in any other movie. Interestingly, Odesu, or what they were calling him, Odesu or Desu, that actually name translates to Oedipus. He's named after Oedipus, and for those of you that are familiar with that story, for those of you that are familiar with that story, Oedipus Rex is a story of a man who unknowingly marries his mother, and so kind of gets at this incestual story. And so I thought that was a really interesting aspect that kind of, foreshadows potentially what some reveals are. Cap, you mentioned it, but this is it's a love story. It is in a weird way, but it is a love story. It's a love story of a brother and his sister, and then a love story of Desu, and then eventually his daughter, and also having that memory wiped, and then just being able to love somebody after being in solitude for over 15 years and seeking revenge.
Let me just chime in real quick. Let's not forget what he does in order to save his daughter from knowing. He cuts off his own
How
tongue.
did we miss
everybody.
that Savage scene? Savage scene. I'm calling it for Savage.
He cuts off his own tongue
Savage
in order to
scene.
save his daughter from finding out that she is in love with her own father, and essentially ruining this innocent young lady's life. So
Yeah. And honestly, I'm surprised nobody brought that scene up. That was the scene that actually made me quiver the most. Of like that was the nails on the chalkboard.
Talked about
scene
that.
And you
for
don't.
me.
It doesn't even show it. All you do is see his hand squeezing the scissors.
That's enough. Scissors are a dirty thing to play with like
Oh
that. That
my
is
God.
fun. Yeah, I'd like to. If we had a vote, which is not important on Savage Scene, I'm changing my tooth pulling to that. I mean that. I'm, folks, that is crazy.
So many savage scenes.
I hope for some of the folks out there listening too that this is enough. Even if you haven't seen these movies, but you've seen one of them, it's your favorite, to go check out this movie. Even with these little tidbits. Doc, we haven't had your vote though yet.
All right, so I'm about to bring it home right now. So that said about Oldboy, which I did enjoy it on a second watch, I actually didn't realize how much I was going to love Gladiator. I knew I loved it as a teen, and the action scenes and revenge aspect really resonated with me. But this second time or third time or however many times I've seen it, but this time being 36 years old really hit me in a different way. And on top of that, I already kind of brought those points up, but the Hans Zimmer score, which we didn't talk about, but really the emotion in that, like that is such a great scene. As soon as that started, I just was brought back to my earlier watchings and love for that movie. The Joaquin and Russell dynamic, as I mentioned, I love that. This is a film about family, about setting things right. The end scene that stuck with me the most is at the moment Maximus is most vulnerable. He's stabbed. He's on his last death. He's having visions of crossing over essentially. He has a choice to make. He can just fall over and go be with his wife and his son, which is what the reason he's been doing this all along, and so die and reunite, or he can revenge the death of his pseudo father and slay his son, the one who took his family from him. And I love that he makes a choice in that moment. The choice that actually the easiest choice would just be to fall down and die and go be with his family. But he makes a choice to do the right thing, to avenge, that his, pseudo father's death, and then to put what's right in place and kind of say, these are the last words of Marcus Aurelius, and, and get things set back up, do his part, and then boom, he goes and reunites. And that again just struck a chord with me. And I gotta give the edge to Gladiator.
I love it, man. I was back there watching those, just watching the movie with you, man. Like it is very impactful, and I agree with everything you say. Beware, what do you got to say?
I agree with I agree with all the sentiments across the board, wherever the vote lies, because they're both really good movies. I will say personally though that I thought Oldboy was I kind of went into Oldboy thinking I had it and held it in high acclaim, and I still do, but I think I liked it less. It's a little brutal than I like in my movies these days. I don't know what that's all about, but maybe it was just because it was less redeeming in that regard. It never came back around to really please you, while Mike did give a good point about him seeing that smile at the end and him getting some sort of happiness. It was kind of a twisted happiness, where on Gladiator's sense it was more redeeming and more honor in the situation, just overall, regardless. There's a lot
strength
of
and honor.
Yes, strength and honor. There's a lot of honor in what Oldboy did too, but it just obviously it felt better in Gladiator. I will say that I like the score part too. That was a good one that I didn't consider. That Adam brought that the Doc brought up. That was really good. And I think just in terms of the fact that they're both revenge movies, I think ultimately Gladiator built up the characters a little bit more, and that you see Maximus's family and you get to know them a little bit, and it kind of pulls at your heartstrings quite a bit when that's held over Maximus throughout the movie, and that when that comes back around at the end, you kind of close that loop and feel good about it. You know what I mean? And whereas Oldboy, you don't necessarily have that, like, oh, his wife died, you saw that in a news clip. You don't never even saw her, a lot of that stuff kind of just came and went, which is unfortunate, but that's how the product of the environment in the movie. But ultimately, I think that when you look at it from a revenge standpoint, that works in Maximus and Gladiator's favor, and that's why it gets my vote. Just I think it's a better revenge movie ultimately. It's not sick and brutal.
And I'm surprised we didn't bring up that point that what was the greater revenge tale? And I guess we just voted on it, but really that's not what we're voting on. We're voting on greatest movie, but it really did come down to it with two revenge movies coming down to face each other, which Beware just pointed out, is that Gladiator, I agree, was the better tale of revenge. The Oldboy has a crazy story, but hey, folks, the votes are in, and we know which movie, and we knew it for a second. But I'm always want to hear what my thread members say about these movies, and it's like, man, we really do have some great ones on the 64 list, and I'm really excited that Gladiator's moving forward. But folks, if you know the name of the game, I got a hat next to me, and in this hat is a bunch more movies. And I'm about to pick one. If the folks are ready out there and our thread members are ready, I'm about to pull a little movie or two out of the hat. And folks, the mulligan rule is in effect. So don't forget that at any time, one of our thread members could use a mulligan and substitute a movie with just one vote. That movie will be put into the bracket battle and homework will change drastically. Folks, I'm going to shake up this little hat.
Hey, as you're shaking it up, I just want to say, like, this actually has become like my favorite part of the podcast almost. Like, I love talking about the movies. But I'm excited, selfishly kind of, to like know what we're going to be watching in the next week, and I was thinking about what's the next movies that we're going to watch. And so I'm excited.
Who's got them R.L. Steins? Who's got them R.L. Steins? I do, folks. I'm excited, and I'm going for the poll. He's shuffling. He has a movie in his hand, and what is it, ladies and gentlemen? It's tiny as always. Oh, folks, I think we have a great homework assignment, and this is going to be a very, very, very good bracket battle, and I think the thread is going to agree with me. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have is Good Will Hunting versus the Royal Tenenbaums, folks.
Wow. Awesome.
What do we think about that, guys? What do we think about that? Tell me a little bit about it. I'm not using a mulligan. Oh, goodness, no.
No, that's so Good Will Hunting versus Royal Tenenbaums. That matchup would actually go up against the winner of The Departed and Goodfellas, which we have yet to record that podcast. That's a great movie choice. I'm very excited to watch both of these movies again.
The only thing I feel a little guilty about is the lack of maybe Wes Anderson movies that could be classified as a comedy. We've explained in episode 0 the rules and what movies were left in and out. But the Royal Tenenbaums, although it is comedy in parts, you cannot call this movie a straight up comedy. Doc,
it's a drama.
Oh, absolutely not. It's a family drama, if there ever was one.
And it is well told, and we can't give too much away, but who's going to do their homework? Are we waiting until the last minute, guys? What are we doing? I mean, these are some classics. I think they're going to be shorter, sweeter, a little bit easier to intake. All your family members and Body's kids are going to love it. Doc, what do you got to say?
All I got to say is actually I hate this matchup because I'm as you guys all know, I'm a huge Wes Anderson fan. Super biased. Obviously, I'm going to try to pull that out of this, of course. But I also love Good Will Hunting, and I'm a big fan of that movie too. So this is going to be a hard one for me.
Yeah, I'm really excited for to watch Good Will Hunting. I haven't seen that in a really long time. I've seen Royal Tenenbaums quite a few times, but it'll be nice to revisit Good Will Hunting. And
it'll be a fun, double quotable episode next week.
The quotes are
very quotable. Stuff we still say today.
Yeah.
Folks, I'm so glad. Beware, please talk about it.
I feel like Good Will Hunting is a movie that in my head jumped the shark at a certain point. And it is it's been a while since I've seen it. And so like when I think about it, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that movie. Like I've seen that like a handful of times. The lines are kind of played out. But then on the other hand, I could probably say that about Royal Tenenbaums too, but I'm biased because I really like that one.
Beware's the type of guy though.
But I used to have a Royal Tenenbaums poster up in my bedroom.
Yes. Beware's the type of guy though. If he hasn't seen a movie in 5 years, I bet he could write a paper about it and he'd get an A+ on the assignment. So folks, if you don't have time to do your homework, it might be all about muscle memory. Doc, what do you got to say?
So I've been thinking about it, and I actually hate this matchup so much. I'm going to propose the first mulligan.
What?
Oh!
Whoa!
Folks, OM. Stop, folks. Hey, folks, we need a timeout. Folks, I hope you didn't just think the episode 3 was about to end, folks, because you just missed a huge thing that happened. We have a thread member that has just used his mulligan, and now I don't want to take up much more time because I was so ready to get into my homework. I might have started tonight, folks. Doc, I'm so frazzled, folks. Doc, I need
I'm frazzled too.
I need the thread members to vote very quickly. Lightning round. I'm calling for it. He only needs one. We're not going to have a 4-0.
What is it?
That's the Doc is trolling us, folks. Please, Doc. I'm sorry. Go.
So remind me of the rules of the mulligan, just so
you can go to me for that. So the mulligan, you propose which movie you would like to replace with your movie. So we only get one. You want to take one out?
Only in the first round.
Yeah, only in the first round. So basically, the only way that your movie doesn't go through is if all 4 of us say no to your mulligan, at which point you get to keep your mulligan and use it for another time.
Want to hear what movie it is?
Doc, please.
I do.
Now, do I also pick what movie it replaces?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to replace Good Will Hunting. Wow. And I'm going to propose Eddie and the Cruisers.
Oh, you know what? We're going to go to the cap. And I said, let's vote quick, folks. I don't want to give explanation because this is just, you're talking about one of the.
I'm going to say hard no.
We got a hard no from Cap. Savage, I don't even know. Savage, have you seen Eddie and the Cruisers?
I've not seen it. I'm probably the only one in the thread that hasn't seen Eddie and the Cruisers. I'm gonna agree with Cap on that.
You're going with the no. Now, Beware, I'm going to you. You are a big fan of this movie as I am. We have it on vinyl. We love Eddie. I would put him in our music too. What do you got to say, Beware?
I mean, it's tough, right? I was hype about it. I was really hype about being able to go back and kind of go against the grain. But ultimately, I think that there's one movie that I really want to see.
The dark side's calling love and is real. She'll never know just how I feel.
Ladies and gentlemen, made me feel so. Oh man, it makes me feel mean.
That's it.
Honestly, it's Eddie and the Cruisers because now I can't vote against it. But I will tell you, if Beware would have said maybe no, I might have piggybacked off him and said no too. But the truth is, I love Eddie and the Cruisers. And you know what? I'm excited that some of our members on this thread, our thread, haven't seen it and maybe get to watch it. Is it one of the greatest? Could it be an upset to one of the greatest movies? Everybody knows Good Will Hunting is a good movie, folks. But tonight, it doesn't matter because you're with our thread and we are coming up with one of the greatest, but we didn't say that, hey, we got to follow the rules. And our rules are the mulligan rules in effect, and it's been used tonight. And I'm excited. But you'll have to tune in for episode 4 when we will have Eddie and the Cruisers versus folks, the Royal Tenenbaums. And some thread members are not happy about it, but hey, who knows? I thought, 5 years ago I would have voted for Oldboy, but I voted for Gladiator.
Hey,
who knows?
Whose idea was it to have a mulligan anyway?
Yeah,
I think it was me. So
you were golfing
here we go.
Or something like that. I don't know. It was, but ladies and gentlemen,
yeah.
I hope you haven't seen this movie and you go check it out and you do your homework with us, man. I've had a great time hanging out with my friends on our thread. welcome to the thread, folks. I was glad to have you here for episode 3, and we'll see you for episode 4. Wow, I can't wait for it. Signing off, I'm All It Is, and I'm here with my yuggos, the Doc, Cat, Beware, and someone I'm so fond
there
of.
He is.
Savage. And I just
See
you soon.
Good morning.
Morning.
Oh, and in case I don't see you, good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
Well, it's very, homey.
What? Are you kidding? We got us a family here.
I hope you realize how you hurt my feelings.